So for those wondering about the next MacBook Pro refresh, we do have some new details, and so let's delve into it guys, but first, make sure to like and subscribe for the latest Apple news and rumours, and with that being said, let's just tuck in. Right, so obviously the M1 Max and the M1 Pro MacBook Pros was a massive refresh, and so expect the M2 variants to be a pretty minor update. In fact, literally the only change is going to be the chips. Everything else should be the same as the M1 versions. Now, one would expect the M2 Pro and the M2 Max to be closely based on the M2 chip, so that should roughly mean 10 CPU cores like the M1 versions, but an upgrade in the GPU cores to 20 and 40 on the Pro and the Max. And of course, the process they should be based on is the 5nm plus process we saw with the A15 chip. And also, like the M2, one would expect the RAM to be upgraded, and so you could probably get up to 48 gigs of RAM with the M2 Pro and up to 96 gigabytes of RAM with the M2 Max. However, apparently that's actually not going to be the case. Unlike the M1 chips, the M2 Pro and the M2 Max could be based on a different process compared to the M2 chip. So Shrimp Apple Pro and some other sources claim we could see a 3nm process for the M2 Pro and the M2 Max, and this has sort of been suggested with a press release from TSMC suggesting they could ship 3nm products by early 2023. And this does line up with the release date we've heard from sources for these new MacBooks. And so yeah, these could be the first Macs to use this new process. And to be honest, I know this sounds crazy, but I do think there is quite a good chance this could be the case. Now, why do I think this? Well, the upgrades with the M2 chip were pretty minor compared to the M1. The CPU was 18% faster and the GPU was 35% faster, but that won't make much of a difference in day-to-day use. Now, thankfully, for the most part, the M2 Max do have other things to offer instead. Now, let's forget about the MacBook Pro for a minute because I doubt many are going to buy that. Let's focus on the main flagship Mac, the MacBook Air, because while the chip upgrades are pretty minor, you're getting a bevy of upgrades with the design, speakers, microphone, and also webcam. However, much like the M2 MacBook Pro, the higher-end MacBook Pros won't change apart from the chip, and so giving them a slight speed boost really is not enough to justify a refresh. And so to counteract the lack of upgrades with the design and pretty much everything else, giving these Macs the new 3nm process and possibly the ARM v9 architecture could of course massively improve the performance. And one could argue that performance matters with these Macs, and so giving these consumers access to the 3nm process first could be the right move. And yes, with this new 3nm process, expect a much bigger performance leap and also much better efficiency, which can give us better battery life with these Macs. I guess the only rebuttal point I can think of that could suggest this won't happen is, of course, the chip shortage. Many of us were expecting the A16 chip to be based on a full 3nm process, but that's not going to be the case. Due to the chip shortage, Apple is forced to reuse the 5nm process for the A-series chips. And so while TSMC does estimate they should be shipping products with 3nm chips in early 2023, that of course can change. And considering these MacBooks still are backordered months after release, maybe Apple wants a larger surplus of these MacBooks at launch, and so sticking to the tried and tested 5nm process might be the move. However, to be honest, I think Apple can risk giving us the 3nm process with these higher-end Macs, since they're not as popular as the base M2 Max, and so using the 5nm process for those Macs certainly was the right move. And yes, ultimately we're going to see a Mac Pro based on the higher-end M2 chips, and so this Super Mac having a 5nm chip would kinda suck, to be honest, and so I can see Apple giving us 3nm Pro chips to of course give the Mac Pro the best performance on the market. Oh, by the way, for those wondering if the base MacBook Pro is going to get a refresh, Steve Mosser does suggest, yeah, that could be in the works, and it could be a mix between the 14-inch MacBook Pro and of course the M2 MacBook Air refresh. And yeah, this has seemingly been suggested within codes, though to be honest, I'm not sure why Apple needs to release this, since we've heard about a 15-inch MacBook Air in the works, and this could be the ideal replacement for that base Pro in the lineup. And with the Air being so powerful, I do think Apple can kill off the Pro branding. I will say though that Ross Young has suggested there is a 14-inch LCD iPad in the works, and I think that's more likely to be a MacBook, and so that could be more evidence that Apple's giving us a base Pro based on the 14-inch MacBook Pros we already have. And by the way, Ross has made mistakes like this in the past, since he only gets details on the displays and then guesses on the product. For example, he thought a iMac Pro was in the works, but then we found out this was actually a Studio Display Pro, so that could be the case with this 14-inch iPad. But yeah, apart from that, I do think a 15-inch MacBook Air makes more sense. So let's delve into some of your questions regarding future Macs. So Randomness R says they want faster ports like HDMI 2.1 and also Face ID on the MacBooks. Now I'm assuming you're referring to the higher-end Pros, and yes, I do see Apple giving us faster HDMI with a future MacBook. In fact, I'm surprised the M1 models did not get that when the Apple TV 4K has it. But anyways, yes, we should see the upgrades with the M2 models. Face ID wise though, I'm not sure, because yes, we already have a notch that could easily be used to fit Face ID sensors, but at the same time I think that would be a big enough feature that Apple waits to implement it with a massive redesign. And while Apple redesigns the MacBook Pros every 5 or 6 years, yes, I don't think Face ID is coming to MacBooks anytime soon. But I totally agree that this would be a great feature for the Mac. Instantly opening the Mac and of course it recognizing your face would be quite nice. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Anyways, thank you for watching guys. Make sure to like and subscribe for the latest Apple news and rumours. Check out the video link above on details regarding the iPad 10, and on that note, I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya peeps.